Ari, Geordie Prepper here. This is another Prepper's Perspective. I've got a special guest, Prepper veteran again. He's been on the show in the past. We're talking about CBRN. This is due to the incident in Salisbury. Welcome to the show again, Prepper Vet. Great to have you.
Yeah, g'day. How are you? Glad to be back.
I'm good here. This nerve agent attack that was in Salisbury in England, first of all, what do you think it means? Do you think this is like an escalation?
I think that, well, for the first time, it's not the first time a nerve agent has been used in Britain. I mean, if you were to Google it, there's numerous other events that have taken place. We're talking about an espionage event here, and no sympathy for the actual people themselves. I mean, these people have been warned. You go against Mother Russia, you defect, and so on and so on. You're playing the double agent espionage game. Then you're going to be in the firing line for the rules of the game. So in that respect, I've got no sympathy whatsoever. However, it is the wider aspect that, and the wider implications to the general public, to you, me, and the everyday person on the street, which is the scary thing. I mean, collateral damage, for instance, that's what we call it. I think most people, they haven't really mentally prepared themselves for a CBRN event, especially a nerve agent event in this instance. In terms of what to do, where to go, what do they carry, I can't really blame them because it's not something that's not that's that likely to occur. Even as a nation, I don't think we're ready for such an event. I mean, yes, we've got the gear, the contingencies in place, but the detection, containment, and the cleanup requires specialization by specially trained personnel and special equipment, and that isn't really there. I don't think. I think as far as the emergency services go, and that's where everyone looks at and everyone calls when something like this happens. It's a very limited amount of people that can deal with it, and in general, just the likely the way a CBRN agent affects people. It's a delayed reaction. I mean, in this instance, we saw someone saw, I'll take it was the policeman, two people on a park bench showing unusual symptoms. And, that could open up a whole variety of issues. What could it be? The last thing on someone's mind is a nerve agent attack. So it's realization and what to do in those sorts of circumstances. The advantage of a CBRN release, of course, is it's very scary. And, in such small amounts, it can have devastating effects and long-lasting effects, including the decontamination and containment of suspected areas like we're seeing in this Salisbury event. The trouble is actually identifying the agent at the time of release, I think.
So regards the agent, it's said to be Novichok, which was... just looking at Wikipedia, I mean, Wikipedia is not the best source, but it says from the 1970s until the early 1990s it was developed. The agents were designed to achieve 4 objectives: to be undetectable using standard NATO chemical detection, defeat NATO chemical protective gear, and to be safer to handle. So this agent was allegedly used, and the area has obviously been cordoned off, but what's the likelihood that anyone's going to go into that area? What sort of timescale are they going to keep it cordoned off? Because the one thing I've noticed is that people are visiting the area. I mean, would that happen? I mean...
Well, it has happened. The thing is, a whole multitude of questions comes out of this event, and there's question marks all over the place from the beginning. Right up until, 4 or 5 days later, they were telling people to wash their clothes and stuff, and there could be a hazard here or there. It was done on such the actual release of the agent itself is still not confirmed in terms of how it was released, the dissemination method. I've heard reports from, I think, at the Washington Post saying it was released through the car ventilation system. It's a very scary agent indeed, if it was indeed Novichok. In terms of its objectives, it was designed to defeat NATO or Western personal protective equipment and detection methods. I mean, that's scary to begin with. How that was done, I don't know. But from what I can see, the difference is that it comes in a very fine powder, which means the actual dissemination methods can be quite different as opposed to being used as an aerosol, which is the conventional sort of release methods. And therefore, the conventional treatments may not work as effective for all other agents.
So this could be, somebody could just be carrying it and they could apply it directly to the intended target. Or what would the risks to be to doing that? I mean,
yeah,
the person, the individual dealing the agent, they would have to be geared up, wouldn't they? Or would they just take one from Mother Russia or whoever?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, not as in take one for the home team, but if you're handling, no matter what the CBR agent is, there's still the main routes into the body which can affect you. So inhalation, absorption, ingestion, and inoculation. And what we mean by that is skin penetration. Through it be a contaminated object into the skin or an insect bite and so on. But most weaponized agents, I'll class this as one, is going to be an inhalation hazard. So you breathing it in, and absorption hazard. So if it gets onto your skin, no matter what form it comes in, it could be powder, droplets, etc., it's going to absorb into your skin and into your system. The main detection methods you'll come across will be your nose and eyes. We all got a keen sense of smell. Anything unusual, you can smell it straight away. Anything unusual in the air which comes into your eyes, you're going to notice that straight away as well. So smell and eyes is going to be the first indications that you're in the vicinity of something dangerous.
And again, going off Wikipedia, it's saying that the scientists who developed the agents claim they're the deadliest nerve agents ever made, but these two people who seem to be directly targeted are still alive. So does the amount of nerve agent make a difference?
Conventionally, yes. I've got to admit, when they come out with the identification that it was Novichok, I'd never heard of it before. No one mentioned it in the military. It was just the standard H, G, and V agents. The G being the classic Tarban, Sarin, Soman, Cyclosarin, and the VX.
Because they're saying here that it's 5 to 8 times more potent than VX. So wouldn't that be something that they should really be telling the troops about?
No doubt they will adopt and change their tactics, techniques, and procedures from now on. And that was evidence in the first responders the first CBRN responders, who were the specialised team from the RAF. They turned up, and when they actually approached various suspected contaminated areas, they were actually double suited. They had a conventional CBRN suit, militarised CBRN suit, which we've all seen, the Mark IV suit, and they had another suit on top of that suit, which was more of a Tyvek material with another pair of gloves on top of their double gloves already, so triple gloved up. They gaffer tape or duct tape over the seals. So it was an overkill. You can never be too much of an overkill on this sort of stuff. With that type of agent, I suppose the unknown was there all the time.
What about cross-contamination? If someone's been directly targeted with a nerve agent, what's the possibility that it's going to perhaps go on to other people? Because, like this Salisbury incident, there was people who were obviously going to help them, and they were being interviewed by news teams. Now, how easy is it for a nerve agent in whatever form to be passed on from one individual to the other?
Right, that would be a contact hazard or a vapor hazard. If anyone is walking around with liquid agents on them, then they're a walking vapor hazard. Anyone in close proximity, downwind from them, is going to be breathing in the vapor, which is gassing off into the atmosphere. Yeah, other than that, you're going to be looking at a contact hazard. Anyone with any form of agent on them, if you touch them, then it's cross-contamination onto yourself. Whether or not someone will come down with the effects more than others, like in this instance you mentioned they're still alive, that will probably depend on the amount of agent released in the first place, probably very small, because if these are 5 to 10 times more potent than the most powerful nerve agent we know, then I'd suspect, going off that description, it will kill you within seconds. So in this instance, I'd suspect the amounts are quite low, and still they don't know where all the contamination is.
How common is it that there will be external like signs that someone's came across, in contact with a nerve agent?
If anyone's contaminated with any form of nerve agent, then they're going to experience a common set of symptoms. And normally they're divided into 3 sort of stages: early symptoms, later symptoms, and the dangerous symptoms, depending on the dosage they've received. And you're talking the early symptoms is going to be things like a runny nose, a sensation of increased salivation in the mouth, tightness of chest, pinpointing of pupils, and then difficulty in breathing. That will develop on to the later symptoms, which will be headaches, dizziness and general weakness, excessive sweating, and then it will move on from there onto the danger symptoms, which will be nausea and vomiting, involuntary urination and defecation, muscle twitching and jerking, frothing at the mouth, and ultimately loss of consciousness, stoppage of breathing. The time span from the first symptoms, the runny nose, red eyes, all the way through to stoppage of breathing would depend on the severity of the dosage released.
So obviously, preppers, we do have things like gas masks, CBRN, suits. The typical Army surplus British issue CBRN Mark IV that you mentioned.
Yeah.
Would that cover, the majority of any events like this? What's the lifespan of one of those suits anyways? Is it a multi-use or single use?
Oh yeah, they would cover a whole host, every aspect of CBRN. They will protect you. They'll protect you from the most immediate threats, which is inhalation. So your respirator will protect you from that, and the filters on the respirator. Absorption. The suit will stop anything coming through the suit and onto your skin to absorb it into your skin. So it will protect you from all those aspects. The lifespan of the suit would depend on the contamination. Generally, in a contaminated area, you're looking at no more than 24 hours. That suit will protect you. However, we can't all be walking around town scared that a CBRN event's going to happen and walking around suits ready to go.
Yeah, exactly.
The biggest thing with if anyone's concerned about a chemical attack, a nerve attack, a dirty bomb attack, what I do, I never advise people what to do. I'll give them examples of what I do. For instance, I carry around various contingencies. I carry around a chemical escape mask, for instance, which not only protects me against weaponized nerve agents, but protects me against smoke inhalation as well, and all the chemicals that are released through burning items. So it's dual purpose item. So I carry around one of them. I carry around some water and a first aid kit as part of my EDC. If anything happens, like a dirty bomb, for instance, you're not going to know that it's actually a radiological device to begin with anyway until much later on. Immediately, you're just going to think it's a conventional explosive device. Carrying around protective suits for that scenario is going to be a time wastage, as far as I'm concerned. I would say look out for release or attack indicators, and then know what to do if you identify any sort of chemical attack. Know your emergency decontamination drills. You know, it's wet and dry decontamination drills. Carry around some gloves if you want. Also have a lot of questions posed to me through emails talking about airtight suits. People are concerned they want to buy airtight suits for this and that. I mean, you'll never wear them. When are you going to wear them for a start off? You'd only wear them if you have knowledge that there's an immediate incoming attack of any sort of CBRN event anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, there's obviously like warning systems in place for nuclear, incoming attacks. But I mean, a lot of agents, they could just be dispersed in the wind, couldn't they? I mean, in the First World War, that happened. And I mean, it was a bit of a hit and miss, because if the wind changes, then, you're going to be dumping it on your own men. But I don't see anything in place, or I haven't heard of anything to warn the general population about a nerve agent attack.
Well, I think there's the Salisbury example, for instance, where the general population were collateral damage. I mean, if the Russians or anyone who was specifically targeting Sergei and his daughter, just like NATO do with drones and high-value targets in ISIS, there's plenty of examples of collateral damage and civilians that have been killed in that scenario. If anything were to happen that is known about with some warning, then there are measures in place. There is a smartphone emergency beacon transmission system, which is automatically, I think, loaded onto every smartphone now and is enabled. So unless you go in there and disable it, you will get some warning through your smartphone, for instance, as to any incoming disaster or emergency, not just CBRN, but other emergencies such as flooding, hurricanes, cyclones, and so on.
So really, the public should be just putting information's obviously key, so they should be using tools that they might already have on them, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you can, there's so many scenarios that can happen that you can't train for everything. I think if I was to give anyone advice as to what to do if they're concerned, I would say keep your situational awareness up to speed and have some form of immediate action drill and gear to enable you to counter that emergency or get out of that area. And if we're talking about CBRN, then don your gear, assess what's going on. If you haven't got any gear, cover your nose and mouth, your skin, warn others, get out of the threat zone, keep upwind and uphill, avoid low-lying areas, and avoid contact with others until you get into a safe zone and either carry out personal decontamination or are in contact with the emergency services who can decontaminate for you.
Yeah, that's something I don't really recall seeing in the Salisbury thing, was any decontamination tents.
It was a bit of a farce to be an onlooker, to be honest. I mean, you had a group of guys in CBRN suits, military guys and police, decontaminating and inspecting areas 10 feet away with a press, with their cameras, with no protection whatsoever. I mean, it just didn't weigh up.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of questions I have about this incident. I mean, just from reading about the potency of the Novichok, I mean, I think, you know, it's when it says it's 10 times stronger than most other nerve agents, I think even if a small amount, just to me, that would seem like if someone's going to do the job and target someone, they're going to make sure that the job's done. So if anything, they're probably going to use more than what they would need. And just the area that it's occurred in, the procedures and the cordoning off of the area, it just seems like, you know, like no shits were given. Like the press are coming in. I mean, if it was an actual area that was contaminated, I mean, surely there would be the immediate area that you would section off, and surely beyond that there would be like an outer area, you know, just to be sure.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand why they did it the way they did, but I wasn't on the ground at the time, so I couldn't comment on why they did things, but just my opinion of just from what I saw, and that's what we can go on, is that the containment areas looked too small to me. It was a rolling investigation, so they turn up on the scene, start investigating things. There's an area of contamination there, fine. How far do they contain that area? I don't know. Then they moved on to another area, which was the bar and the restaurant. Then they moved on to the car park. By this time, people have already been there after any contamination was present. So there's loads of questions flying around, but I suppose if they initially thought that the contamination was limited to that park bench, then you can't unnecessarily seal off the whole town in case other areas are contaminated. You know, it's an unnecessary risk or unnecessary action. You've got to weigh up the odds, I suppose. There'll be hundreds of people working on this case. So, and there are lots of measures in place. It's just they're running around in circles, and whoever carried out the attack to begin with has done a really good job, and it shows because of the actions thereafter.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something which has put fear into people, because the businesses in the area, you know, they had people cancelling their appointments. People were afraid to leave their homes, and it has had like a real shock effect. But for me personally, when I'm looking at this, it just seems to show up all the holes in the official procedures that would take place. It doesn't really give me much confidence that if it was to happen in, say, like in the centre of Newcastle, from what I've seen, it just doesn't look like they really have had enough practice dealing with it for real to be effective at sealing off an area, you know, decontaminating an area, you know, making sure all those involved were contained. I mean, there was a guy supposedly helping the guy and his daughter, and he's being interviewed by the press, you know, like hours afterwards. I mean, shouldn't he be in like a containment room, you know, being decontaminated, like in the showers or whatever? It doesn't really give me much confidence, so I'm really glad for Prepman that I'm more aware of these sorts of things.
There's countless examples throughout history. I mean, last year, for instance, the Burlington Gap toxic cloud which swept across the south coast was another scenario of the public being caught unaware.
That was the chlorine cloud, well, yeah.
It's just the way it happened. I mean, why would anyone, if they wanted this guy and his daughter killed, why didn't they subcontract it out to the local mafia, for instance, and just walk up to him and shoot him? Why do they have to use a nerve agent? which has much wider implications and a wider ranging scope of contamination to others.
Yeah, and also, I mean, they're saying that it was produced in Russia, but I mean, surely anyone with the ingredients, I mean, couldn't they just make it? And
I'm not sure as how hard it is to be made, but it wouldn't surprise me if, I mean, it's an easy opportunity for the British or NATO under that umbrella now it's an easy opportunity for those to use this to go after Russia with all sorts of sanctions and extra penalties.
yeah, it seems a really weird choice of targeting someone, but yeah. So just to sum up, I mean, like I say, prepping shouldn't, take over your life or anything like that, and I think the tactic was to induce fear, but talking about it, that we don't want to make the public more afraid, by discussing things, but it is important that they do and are aware of, that it has happened, and they need to be aware of the surroundings, really. I mean, is there any, just simple basic advice, that people can do every day?
Yeah, there is. There's quite a lot. Go to my YouTube channel, Preppervet UK, and I've got a playlist of about 6 or 7 videos at least that details all this information as to what I would do, what I would look for, the immediate actions I'd take, how to decontaminate and all this sort of stuff in those videos. But basically, you've got to keep your wits about you, look out for the attack indicators. Basically, if you see anything suspicious in terms of mist, smoke, droplets, splashes, smell anything unusual, notice any unusual symptoms in yourself or others, or hear any sort of alarm, it could be someone shouting or an indication on your phone, then assume that something drastically is going wrong. Adopt your practiced immediate action drill. Carry some form of gear with you, and then get out the threat zone and deal with it. And the gear could be simple. There's plenty of items out there which can counter this sort of stuff. I carry around a chemical escape mask. If anyone is considering getting one of those, be aware which ones you get, though, because there are a lot of ones which over-advertise themselves. Primarily, they're the ones made in China, funnily enough.
Yeah,
decent quality one. And
with the Salisbury event, I mean, I was saying to someone, I wonder what the interest and uptake in CBRN equipment's going to be around Salisbury now.
Yeah, it was actually interesting looking at some of the gear they wore there. I see the police are behind the curve at the moment. They're still wearing S10 respirators, when the rest of the world, the rest of the British are wearing GSR respirators. Some escape masks are excellent. Some, for instance, advertise themselves as smoke protection for 60 minutes and longer. And I've had it in good authority that you cannot state that an escape mask or anything that's classed as an escape device can protect you for more than 10 minutes or 15 minutes. So be wary of false claims like that.
Yeah, and like Prepper Veteran says, he has the playlist, and it is really good. Even how to don a CBRN suit, like the Mark IV, properly. Because even I've seen people, putting them on wrong. Like the loops over the shoulders. They don't cross them, etc. So learn it from someone who's actually donned it properly. And thanks for being on, Prepper Veteran. It's certainly an event which is... I'm a prepper, and I could say I'm a bit more confident because I'm a prepping, but things like nerve agents really are scary, and like I said, not to say that prepping should take over your life, but just the basic simple advice and the great advice that you'll find on Prepper Veterans videos should reassure you and help you.
The trouble with today's society is the need for speed. We want things now, we want things at convenience, we want things quickly. this pans out in the media and their requirements to sensationalise everything as well. Today's news will be forgotten about next week, and we'll move on to another sensational event, and so on and so on. The cycle just continues on and on. So keep it basic, keep your drills up to speed, have some sort of contingency, and at least a first aid kit.
And with that great advice, I think we'll end the show now. So thanks very much for your time, Prepper Veteran. Again, always great to have you on.
No worries.
And we'll see you, the listeners, on the next Prepper's Perspective. This has been Geordie Prepper, my special guest, Prepper Veteran. Be safe and be prepared.